In a dusty courtroom in Willow Creek, a blind veteran faced a judge's mocking laughter, his plea for justice dismissed as a nuisance. But when a retired general took a seat in the front row, the room fell silent, and a story of resilience, loyalty, and redemption began to unfold. This is the tale of how one man's quiet courage and an unexpected ally turned shame into a movement that echoed far beyond the courthouse walls. The Willow Creek Courthouse was a relic, its oak-paneled walls and creaking benches steeped in decades of small-town disputes. On a humid Tuesday morning in June, the air was heavy with the scent of wax polish and stale coffee. Elias Monroe stood at the defendant's table, his white cane tapping softly against the worn floorboards, his unseeing eyes hidden behind dark glasses. At 42, Elias carried the scars of his 12-year Army service, most visibly the blindness from a roadside bomb in 2009, but also the quieter wounds of a life upended. His daughter, Sarah, 16, sat behind him, her notebook clutched tightly, her hazel eyes darting between her father and the judge. Judge Harlan Voss presided with an air of impatient authority. His robes hung loosely on his wiry frame, and his thin lips curled into a smirk as he reviewed Elias's case, a claim for a long-delayed disability pension from the Veterans Administration. Elias had been fighting for 3 years, submitting forms, resubmitting lost ones, navigating a bureaucratic labyrinth that seemed designed to wear him down. Today was his chance to be heard, but Voss's tone suggested otherwise. "Mr. Monroe," Voss began, his voice sharp and mocking, "you expect me to believe the VA just lost your paperwork 3 times? Perhaps you're not cut out for filling out forms." A ripple of laughter spread through the sparse crowd, locals, clerks, a few curious retirees. Voss leaned back, enjoying the moment, his pen tapping the bench like a gavel of disdain. Elias's grip on his cane tightened, his jaw set. "Your Honor," he said, his voice low but steady, "I've submitted every document they've asked for. I've called, written, waited. I'm here for what I earned serving this country." Voss chuckled, louder this time. "Earned? Well, let's not get dramatic. The VA's a busy place. Maybe you just need to be more persistent." The crowd tittered again, and Sarah's face flushed with anger, her pen digging into her notebook. She wanted to shout, to tell Voss about the nights her father spent dictating letters to her, the hours on hold with the VA, the way he'd taught himself Braille to keep fighting. But she stayed silent, her trust in her father stronger than her rage. The hearing dragged on, with a VA representative, a board bureaucrat named Mr. Kessler, offering vague excuses about processing delays and system errors. Elias stood through it all, his cane a quiet metronome, his mind flashing to the explosion that changed everything. The searing heat, the scream of metal, the darkness that followed. He didn't expect pity, only fairness. But Voss seemed determined to give neither. Unnoticed by Elias or Sarah, a man had entered the courtroom, slipping into the front row. General Raymond Holt, 68, retired, wore civilian clothes, a crisp button-up and slacks, but his posture screamed military precision. His silver hair caught the light, and his eyes, sharp and unyielding, fixed on Elias. Holt had been Elias's commanding officer during his first tour, though they had rarely spoken. He'd heard about the case through a veterans network and driven 3 hours from his home in Raleigh to see it for himself. The laughter from Voss grated on him, stirring memories of his own son, wounded in combat and nearly broken by the VA's neglect. Holt sat silently, his presence a quiet promise. When the hearing ended, Voss adjourned without a ruling, dismissing Elias with a wave. "We'll review and reconvene. Next case." Elias and Sarah navigated the crowded hallway, her arm guiding him, her voice trembling. "He can't treat you like that, Dad. It's wrong." Elias squeezed her hand, his voice calm despite the sting. "It's one day, Sarah. We keep going." As they left, Holt watched, his jaw tight. He didn't approach, not yet. Instead, he pulled out his phone and dialed a number, his voice low. "Margaret, it's Ray. I need you on a case." Outside, Elias and Sarah walked home under the weight of the morning. unaware that the general's quiet presence was about to change everything. The Monroe house was a modest clapboard bungalow on the outskirts of Willow Creek, its paint peeling, like memories fading with time. Inside it was a patchwork of their lives, Braille books stacked on a sagging shelf, medical bills pinned to a corkboard, Sarah's sketches taped to the fridge. Elias sat at the kitchen table, his fingers tracing a letter from the VA, another delay citing incomplete documentation. Sarah, stirring a pot of chili, glanced at him, her heart heavy. At 16, she was her father's eyes, his scribe, his fiercest defender, but the courtroom had shaken her faith in justice. Before the injury, Elias had been a master mechanic, fixing tanks in the chaos of combat zones, his hands steady under pressure. He dreamed of opening a garage, teaching Sarah the trade, building a life beyond the army. The explosion in 2009 stole that dream, leaving him blind and adrift. Now, he scraped by on odd jobs, voiceovers for radio ads, small repairs for neighbors who trusted his touch. The pension was meant to be a lifeline, but the VA's delays felt like a betrayal. Sarah set a bowl in front of him, her voice soft. "You shouldn't have to beg, Dad. You served. They owe you." Elias smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "It's not about owing, Sarah. It's about promises kept." The next day, Elias visited the Willow Creek Veterans Center, a cramped building filled with the hum of camaraderie and the weight of shared struggles. Carla Rivera, a retired sergeant with a no-nonsense demeanor, greeted him with a hug. "Heard about Voss," she said, pouring coffee. "He's a piece of work, but we'll get you that pension." "Can't afford a lawyer," Elias said, sipping the bitter brew. "We'll find a way," Carla replied, her eyes fierce. She'd seen too many veterans like Elias, worn down by a system that praised their service but ignored their needs. Unbeknownst to Elias, General Holt was already moving pieces into place. From his study in Raleigh, lined with medals and faded photos, he worked the phones. Holt had commanded Elias's unit in 2009, though Elias knew him only as a distant figure, a leader who led from the front but rarely connected personally. Retirement had left Holt restless, haunted by his son's struggles with the VA. Elias's case was personal, a chance to right a wrong he couldn't fix for his own family. Holt called Margaret Chen, a lawyer with a reputation for taking on tough veterans. "Cases. I need you in Willow Creek," he said. "A soldier named Elias Monroe is getting railroaded, blind, honorable, and stuck in bureaucratic hell." Margaret agreed to take the case pro bono, her voice crisp. "Send me the details. I'll dig in." Holt wasn't done. He reached out to his network, veterans, officers, a few journalists with a knack for human interest stories. He wanted pressure on Voss, on the VA, on the system that failed men like Elias. He kept his involvement quiet, not wanting to overshadow Elias's fight. In Willow Creek, the courtroom incident had stirred ripples. At the diner where Sarah worked weekends, a customer overheard her talking about the case and sneered, "Your dad's just milking the system." Sarah's hands shook as she poured coffee, but she held her tongue, channeling her anger into her notebook, where she wrote about her father's strength. That evening, a knock at the door startled them. Margaret Chen stood there, her briefcase in hand, her smile warm but professional. "I'm here to help with your case," she said. Elias, stunned, invited her in, questions swirling. "Who sent you?" he asked. "A friend," Margaret replied, glancing at Sarah. "Someone who believes in you." As they sat, Margaret reviewed Elias's file, her brow furrowing at the VA's inconsistencies. "This is a fight we can win," she said. "But it won't be easy." Sarah, watching from the couch, felt a spark of hope. For the first time, her father wasn't alone. Margaret Chen was a whirlwind of precision, her legal mind dissecting Elias's case with surgical accuracy. Over the next week, she met with Elias and Sarah daily, poring over documents at their kitchen table, her laptop glowing with notes. "The VA's negligence is clear," she said, highlighting a stack of lost forms. "But we need to make Voss see you as a person, not a case number." Elias nodded, his cane resting against his chair. What do I say? Your truth, Margaret replied. Your service, your loss, your fight. Make it real. Sarah, taking notes, added, He needs to know how hard you've worked, Dad. He laughed, but he can't laugh at that. Margaret smiled. Exactly, and we'll have backup. General Holt, meanwhile, was orchestrating a quiet campaign. From Raleigh, he called old comrades, rallying veterans to attend the next hearing, not as protesters, but as witnesses to Elias's struggle. He contacted a local reporter, Lisa Tran, pitching Elias's story as a symbol of systemic failure. Keep it human, he told her. No politics, just truth. Lisa's article, published in the Willow Creek Gazette, was titled Blind Veteran, Battles for Promised Benefits. It detailed Elias's service, the explosion, and Voss's laughter, without naming the judge directly. The piece went viral locally, sparking comments online, some supportive, others accusing Elias of seeking handouts. Sarah read the positive ones aloud, but Elias heard the strain in her voice when she skipped the cruel ones. Holt also reached out to Elias directly, his call catching him off guard one evening. Mr. Monroe, this is General Raymond Holt. I was your CO in 09. I saw the hearing. You deserved better. Elias froze, memories of Holt's commanding voice flooding back. Sir, why are you doing this? Because I've seen too many soldiers left behind, Holt said. You're not fighting alone anymore. The next hearing was set for a month later, and Elias threw himself into preparation. Margaret coached him on his statement, emphasizing clarity and emotion. Sarah helped him practice, reading back his words, her voice steady even when his faltered. At night, Elias lay awake, the explosion vivid in his mind. Dust, screams, the sudden dark. He worried about facing Voss again, about the laughter that still stung. In Willow Creek, the article had stirred debate. At the diner, some customers tipped Sarah extra, whispering support for her father. Others, like a gruff mechanic named Roy, muttered, He's making a fuss over nothing. Sarah ignored them, but the words lingered, fueling her determination. Carla, at the Veterans Center, organized a support group for Elias's case, inviting veterans to share their own VA struggles. The stories were raw: delayed benefits, denied claims, families strained to breaking. Elias listened, his cane tapping softly, realizing his fight was bigger than himself. Holt's network grew. Veterans from across North Carolina pledged to attend the hearing, and a local hardware store donated to a fund for Elias's expenses. Though Margaret worked for free, Holt planned to be there, front row, his presence a silent challenge to Voss. The day before the hearing, Elias and Sarah attended a veterans gathering at Carla's center. The room was packed, the air thick with shared pain and resolve. Young veteran Maria shared how Elias's story had pushed her to refile her own claim. You're giving us a voice, she said. Elias gripped Sarah's hand, his doubts easing. This wasn't just about him anymore. The courthouse was packed, the air electric with anticipation. Elias stood at the defendant's table, Margaret at his side, his cane a steady anchor. Sarah sat in the front row, her notebook open, her pen poised. Behind her were over 50 veterans, some in dress uniforms, others in work clothes, their faces a tapestry of pride and defiance. General Holt sat among them, his silver hair catching the light, his medals gleaming. His presence was understated, but powerful, a quiet rebuke to the laughter of the last hearing. Judge Voss took the bench, his smirk faltering as he scanned the crowd. Order, he snapped, his voice sharper than before. He called Elias's case, his eyes lingering on the veterans, then flicking to his papers. Margaret began, her presentation a masterclass in clarity, charts of lost forms, timelines of delays, letters from Elias's doctors. She introduced a new witness, General Holt, whose name sent a murmur through the room. Elias spoke next, his voice steady despite the knot in his chest. He described his service, 12 years, 2 tours, the bomb that stole his sight. He spoke of the VA's promises, the endless forms, the nights Sarah read letters aloud because he couldn't. I'm not here for pity, he said. I'm here for what was promised to every soldier who served. The room was silent, the laughter of the last hearing a distant memory. Voss shifted, his pen still. Margaret called Holt to the stand, and he rose, his steps measured, his gaze locking onto the judge. "I'm General Raymond Holt, retired," he began. "I commanded Elias Monroe in 2009. He was one of the best, steady under fire, selfless, honorable. He doesn't deserve to be mocked for asking for what he earned." Holt's words landed like a gavel, and Voss's face tightened. Margaret closed with a demand for an immediate ruling, citing the VA's clear negligence. Voss hesitated, his eyes darting to the crowd, then to Holt. "Case approved," he said finally, his voice clipped. "Pension granted." The room erupted, cheers, applause, veterans embracing Elias as he stepped from the stand. Sarah ran to him, tears streaming, and hugged him tightly. "You did it, Dad," she whispered. Holt approached, shaking Elias's hand. "Well done, soldier," he said, his voice warm. Outside, the veterans gathered, sharing stories, their camaraderie a shield against the system's failures. Lisa Tran, the reporter, interviewed Elias, her article already taking shape. But Elias's thoughts were on the future. "This isn't just for me," he told Sarah as they walked home. "We need to help the others." That night, they celebrated quietly, chilly, music, Sarah's laughter filling the house. Elias felt the weight of years lift, replaced by a new purpose. Elias's victory was a spark, igniting change beyond Willow Creek. Lisa's article went national, picked up by major outlets, and veterans across the country reached out, sharing their own VA struggles. Margaret took on more cases, her office a hub of activity. General Holt formalized his network into the Veterans Justice League, a non-profit aimed at reforming the VA and supporting soldiers like Elias. In Willow Creek, the mood shifted. Voss's reputation suffered, his courtroom demeanor subdued. Locals rallied around Elias, with neighbors dropping off meals and businesses donating to the Justice League. Sarah started a blog, Voices Unseen, chronicling her father's fight and others, her writing raw and powerful. Comments poured in, veterans, families, strangers moved by their story. But challenges persisted. Online trolls called Elias a professional victim, and Sarah faced bullying at school, kids mocking her hero dad. At work, her boss at the diner warned her about distractions. Elias, meanwhile, grappled with his new role as a symbol. He began training as a peer counselor at Carla's Center, using his experience to guide others, but the weight of their stories was heavy. Holt secured grants to expand the Justice League, and Carla organized a fundraiser, drawing hundreds. Young veteran Jamal approached Elias, thanking him for inspiring him to fight for his own benefits. "I was giving up," Jamal said. "You showed me I could keep going." Elias hugged him, his cane steady, his resolve stronger. Sarah's blog gained traction, earning her a scholarship offer from a journalism program. She hesitated, worried about leaving Elias, but he insisted. "You're my eyes, Sarah, but you've got your own path." That night, they sat on the porch, the stars above, and Elias felt a peace he hadn't known in years. 5 years later, the Veterans Justice League was a national force, advocating for VA reforms and supporting thousands. Elias, now a seasoned counselor, traveled with Sarah, now in college, speaking at rallies and centers. Holt, though aging, remained a mentor, his quiet strength guiding the movement. In Willow Creek, the courthouse became a symbol of change, with a plaque honoring Elias's case. Voss had retired, replaced by a judge who prioritized fairness. Elias and Sarah moved to a new home, still modest but filled with warmth. Braille books, Sarah's awards, photos of veterans they'd helped. Elias never forgot Voss's laughter, but it no longer defined him. At a national conference, he spoke to thousands, his voice clear. "We fight for each other because no one should stand alone." Sarah, in the audience, beamed, her blog now a platform for veterans' voices. The Justice League pushed for policy changes, securing faster processing times and better oversight. Elias and Sarah hosted workshops, teaching veterans to navigate the system. One evening, a veteran named Lila thanked Elias, her new benefits allowing her to start a business. "You Gave me a future, she said. Elias smiled, his cane tapping, knowing this was his legacy. On the 10th anniversary of the Courtroom victory, Willow Creek held a celebration in the town square. A statue stood, a soldier with a cane, head high, inscribed with "Justice for all." Veterans, families, and supporters gathered, the air filled with music and stories. Elias, graying but strong, stood with Sarah, now a social worker, and Holt, frail but proud. The event was simple: speeches, a veterans choir, stories of those helped by the Justice League. Elias spoke last, thanking Holt, Margaret, Sarah, and the community. "One voice starts a spark," he said, "but it takes all of us to keep it burning." The crowd cheered, and Sarah hugged him, whispering, "You're my hero, Dad." Holt, shaking his hand, added, "You're everyone's." That night, Elias sat on his porch, the crickets a familiar chorus. He didn't need to see the stars to know he'd made a difference. His legacy was in the lives touched, the voices lifted, the justice won. Not just for him, but for all who'd been dismissed. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of courage and justice. If Elias's story inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel to hear more stories of resilience and triumph. Your support keeps these voices alive. Together, let's honor those who fight for what's right.